The actual injury was a T12 fracture, multiple herniations.
Okay.
The rock that I fell on, that the wave threw me into, it had such a significant blunt force trauma that the nerves just completely seized up on the left side of my back. My spine shifted 21 degrees over to the side.
Oh, wow.
So I wonder, would it have taken me 10 years to feel okay if I didn't have that mantra of you're broken and this is only going to get worse and you don't know what you're doing and talking about? I have this and this means that, therefore I can't do that. When you start to process pain like that, it stays around. If resting and avoiding movement was the answer, why don't we all feel freaking amazing?
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Physio Diaries podcast. We are your co-hosts, Dr. Melanie Ziaziaris
and Dr. Koshevatskiy, where students, healthcare professionals, and wellness junkies come to get the inside scoop of the healthcare and wellness industry.
The podcast you didn't know you needed, by your favorite travel physical therapists.
Welcome back to the Physio Diaries podcast with your hosts, Drs. Al and Mel. Today we are joined by Vinny Crispino, the founder of Pain Academy, a movement-based healing system that is changing how people think about pain and recovery. Today we will dive into Vinny's philosophy on healing and the misconceptions that we have related to pain. Whether you're a physio or just someone trying to navigate your own recovery, this episode will challenge how you view pain and what is possible on the other side of it. So let's get into it. Welcome, Vinny. We are very excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Let's start at the very beginning. Just go ahead and introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background, your own injury, and just how that experience kind of led to the birth of Pain Academy.
Yeah, so I guess we'll just go big picture. So, before I started working with people in pain, I was the people in pain. I didn't really care about movement much until I broke my back in my early 20s. So I had a pretty extreme experience of going from one end of the spectrum, being an elite collegiate athlete, 8-time All-American, 30 plus Colorado state records for swimming. And then I broke my back in a surfing accident. I mean, literally, like any traumatic injury, you go from things are okay one minute to things are not okay the next minute. And that really sent my life in an entirely, completely different direction of what should have probably been a great time of my life. When you're 20s, you got to go out there and discover the world and find yourself. I'm just like laying down on the floor, staring at the ceiling. And my story, I think, is probably very similar to most people from that point on, which is when you're in pain, what the hell is going on? How do you come back after a life-changing injury? How do things work? How do a lot of things not work the way people say they do? How do you make sense of it to just like be okay again? I started Pain Academy, which is what I now run, not to start a business. It was selfishly like, how do I just heal myself? What do I need to know? What are the tools and the mechanisms, and who are the people out there who are actually like repairing people's lives and bringing them back online and not having chronic pain be their entire life story anymore? Once I started to put the pieces together myself, and I started to just share it with friends and family, and it worked. And they shared it with their friends and family, and it worked. And just one turned into two turned into four. And now, as I sit here, I think we're at some 14,000 plus successful case stories all over the world.
Yeah,
so
that's amazing.
That's a lot of people.
It is.
Yeah,
that's like stadiums full of people.
I didn't realize how much, because it's just like a number, and I see the little ticker, I see like the reviews and testimonials, and we have this like little internal counter in my company, because every single number should be celebrated, because I was one of those numbers. And it wasn't until I went to a concert in the summer, which is like very unlike me. Too loud sounds, people, I don't know.
Overstimulated. Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
Immediately, people are sloshing beer on you and you just want to immediately get out. But the stadium was like 10,000 people. And I'm looking around like, oh my God, this is an army of people that we've helped. And it was a very like surreal moment for me.
Yeah, it's crazy when you put things into perspective and like juxtapose things, because it's like, yeah, technically you help those a room full of people like that and more, which is like crazy to think about.
Yeah. Humbling, but also not really. Breaking my back was a humbling thing. This was like
Fair.
a little pat for the ego, you know?
Yeah.
Which is important.
Yeah. When you say it broke your back, can you just give a little more detail to that? Like fractures, had to wear the brace, like no movement for, all the precautions. Like, was it all of that?
Yeah. So the actual injury was a T12 fracture, multiple herniations.
Okay.
The rock that I fell on, that the wave threw me into, it had such a significant blunt force trauma that the nerves just completely seized up on the left side of my back. Because of that asymmetrical contracture, my spine shifted 21 degrees over to the side.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah, that's
by
pretty significant.
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
it was, I mean, the x-rays I've shared online before, and it's like you draw a straight line and my spine's on the other side of it. And so the injury hurt. It was hell. I had motor function of my left leg, but sensory function, like when I first surfaced and came above to grab some air, first thing I did was like look down at my leg, because it felt like it had gotten like ripped off. Maybe it was the shock, maybe it was the panic. I'm sure probably a lot of it, but the numbness kind of went away after a couple days. I did the whole rigmarole. I mean, it was brace, it was medication, it was muscle relaxers, anti-inflammatories, a heck of a lot of pain pills.
Yeah.
I was immediately recommended fusion surgery. And
okay. I was going to say, did they say surgery or did they even send you to physical therapy? Like,
yeah, so it was first a surgical recommendation, just given the sheer impact of it. And that was terrifying. So it was an immediate no. What are the other options?
Fair.
And, unfortunately, it was like okay, well, your options are you're just not going to walk. So like wheelchair or crutches. And he was kind of like jovial about it at the time. But,
yeah.
when you're like sitting in that room and you got your back on one of those light up boards, it's terrifying.
And you're 20 something years old. So you think like, if I don't do the surgery, what's going to happen? Like, is that actually a possibility that I might not be able to walk?
Yeah. Terrifying. But I also had this, bullheadedness that, okay, I'm going to argue with somebody with doctorates on the wall. Like I knew better. I didn't. I was just more scared than I was willing to like question the information. I also had this like little voice, and I can't explain it. I don't think I've ever talked about it, but it was just this little voice of, well, that's always an option. They're never going to not do surgery, right? That's like how they make a lot of money, and that's expensive, and
what they're trained to do.
Yeah, it's what they're trying to do. So you know what? Let me just like go at it. Let me go figure it out. Let me go get a second, third, fourth, and fifth opinion out there.
Yes.
And maybe that's not what I have to do right now. And I was also at least mindful enough to know I was not in a state of mind to make a long-term health decision, because I was terrified.
Yeah, that's very mature of you. Like, I think that if I was in my early 20s and like something like that happened, I would have been like, absolutely, like, let's just go ahead with it, And that's impressive that you were like, no, I'm going to take my health into my own hands and look into my other options and do my research, because we know so many patients that like people, they get recommended like spine surgery all the time. You probably know that surgery, usually the outcomes for low back, like spine fusion, any like discectomy, anything like that, the outcomes are not that great. And those people end up having chronic low back pain for the rest of their life and on pain medication. They can't get off of it. And it's like really kind of sad to see,
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
We just had actually a Pilates instructor on, and she originally found Pilates because she had like spondylolisthesis and stenosis and disc herniation, scoliosis. Like she got all the diagnoses.
She was collecting all of them, huh?
All of that. Yeah, literally all of them, like in her 20s. And she was recommended spinal fusion surgery. She said no. And of course, the doctors used scare tactic and actually said like the wheelchair thing too. And I think it's so interesting you just said that, because I'm like, wow, they're really like out here telling people like, if you don't get this surgery, like you could be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life, which is just like scare tactic. Why do you have to do it like that? But that's really interesting.
Well, it sets the stage, and I'm sure we can get into the depth of like the academic side of things, but there's studies that have been done where you take these two groups of lower back pain participants, and one group, you don't tell them what their diagnosis is. You don't say, hey, you have a herniation and this is the amount of millimeters, and the other group, they do tell them, and it's like, which group heals faster, which one has a better experience post whatever injury they have. And
Definitely.
there's something so solid and strong about how this information is communicated. I wonder, would it have taken me 10 years to feel okay if I didn't have that mantra of you're broken and this is only going to get worse and you don't know what you're doing and talking about? Like, I wonder if that would have just been cut in half, if not for this really abrasive process that I went through after breaking.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And we've talked about this before on the podcast, and Mel probably knows what I'm going to say, but we tell this to our patients all the time too, is like, people always just say, I have to do the physical therapy. They told me I have to go through a course of PT because I just want to get an MRI and I want to know what's wrong with my back. And I always tell them, like, I think that imaging can sometimes do more harm than good, because right now, like, I mean, I have occasional back pain, but it's like some days I feel it, but it's like, it doesn't really limit me in my day-to-day activities. But I tell them, I'm like, if they did an MRI on my back right now, they might find that I have 3 disc herniations and I don't have any symptoms like on the day-to-day. And so I feel like people really just like hyper focus. They're like, they told me I have, bone on bone arthritis and there's nothing I can do about it except get a knee replacement. I'm like, who's telling you these things? Because that's not necessarily true, right?
Yeah. And then the $1 million question is, Alice, let's say you do go get that MRI and you do find out it's 3 herniations.
Yeah.
How does that completely move you on a different path of fear and avoidance and anxiousness with your body and hesitation, caution?
Right.
You're going to stop moving as much, and you just like start to snowball and spiral because of a story. And one of the things that I think is so fascinating, and this is, it always like takes some time for modern science to catch up to things. There was a study done that with an 85% certainty, 85% accuracy, they could predict who was going to be in pain by looking at their fMRI scans, not their back scans. When you process pain in the memory and the storytelling regions of the brain, let me make that real for people. I have this, and this means that, therefore I can't do that. When you start to process pain like that, it stays around for
You're
a very,
almost
very long time.
priming the brain to experience pain.
Every time.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the psychological, psychosocial aspect of pain is huge. I don't think enough. I mean, for sure, people don't realize that enough. I like that you brought up the fear avoidance, because that is such a huge part of what we do every day as physical therapists, what we see in people every day, like things we're trying to have our patients unlearn. Like, I've literally had a patient tell me after like a cervical fusion, right, like years ago, like, this is not recent, like, you can't pick up anything more than 5 pounds because of your fusion. And I'm like, 5 pounds is nothing. Like,
how much does my arm weigh? Should I not stand up? How much does my upper body weigh?
When you add in other factors too, like poor health literacy, don't really speak as much English, like all those other things, and people really internalize that stuff and just follow like, okay, yeah, I won't pick up anything more than 5 pounds. I can't move this. I can't move that because I had this. And then it's just, the cycle continues.
Yeah. And if that worked, why would anybody be in pain?
Right.
If resting and avoiding movement was the answer, why don't we all feel freaking amazing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What do you see is I'm sure you're just running. I mean, it's probably just got to be whack-a-mole, right? A lot of different issues. Everybody comes in with different problems. I'm sure you have your specialties, but
Yes.
what is like one of the common denominators between their mindset that you're seeing? And the follow-up question is, do you actually have a sense of, oh, this person's going to be in pain for a while, not because of physical presentation, but because of how they're talking about what's going on?
Yeah.
Totally.
I feel like usually for me, I can kind of tell early on if the patient is like from the first session, if I have them do it, I always start with like very, very basic exercises. No matter who you are, like we want to start off with the basics. And if they're just very hyper focused on every little thing that they're feeling, I kind of know that they might have like a little bit of a longer recovery than someone who's like, okay, like I might do this movement and it might be a little uncomfortable, but a little bit of pain is okay. You know, like you have an acute injury or even like a chronic condition. They understand that it may not necessarily be pain free, but they're still able to do it versus the people that are very hyper focused on every little, like sometimes people describe even a stretch as a pain.
Yes.
And you have to like clarify with them, okay, is this like a soreness type of pain? Is this like a stretching pain? Because a lot of people, to them, any kind of sensation, since they're so like hypersensitive, could be like classified as pain. So I just kind of pay attention to how they respond to those early exercises that are supposed to be relatively simple. And that can kind of tell me how I need to go about things later on
I,
in sessions.
I call that hawk mode. Like a hawk, right? They're
Yeah.
laser they're so hyper vigilant. If you've ever seen a hawk look at you, it's like they look through you. You know, there's
Yes.
no like hiding from a hawk. And one of
Yeah.
the things when I used to have a practice in person before I shifted everything online, you know, people would come out and see me. I'd put them in a position that I was pretty confident would at least help mitigate symptoms. And I'd always ask them what they feel. And the answer was always hyperfixation, zoom in on the area that hurts. And then I would always just gently like, tell me something that feels good. And like, nothing feels good. And it's like, well, what about your ears? Do they hurt?
Yeah.
They're like,
It's a
well,
good one.
no. Like, what about your wrist? No, I've never had pain there. It's like, do you not notice that? Have you trained? And this is like the hypervigilance when you're in chronic pain and you're stuck in that survival mode. What happens, like unknowingly to a lot of people, is they shift their attention so acutely on a symptom that the brain thinks that's the only story going on in their body. Like there's nothing else other than this blaring, raging pain signal. If I can't help guide people into seeing that there's more going on, that's usually the early determining factor of, oh, this is gonna be a minute.
Yeah, it's going to take some time. I had one clinical instructor that I worked with that had an emphasis on patients with chronic pain. And there had been times, because this was physical therapy, but there had been times that we didn't even do a single exercise in a 40-minute session. She was so hypersensitive to any sort of movement. And she had a lot of like trauma in her childhood. And I think that predisposed her to a lot of chronic pain. But I remember one time as a student, I'm sitting there and I'm just watching this lady color snowflakes for 40 minutes straight. Eventually, she was like completely relaxed. Like she was feeling good because we asked her, we're like, what is a childhood memory that you have that is very pleasant, that brings you joy? And she said, like playing in the snow as a kid. And so we just printed out a bunch of snowflakes and had her color for 40 minutes. And I remember at the time as a student, I was like, this is not physical therapy. Like, this is not what I thought I was signing up for. But knowing now, because we've been practicing for 2 years, that patient and so many other people, some of them aren't ready for exercise. Like, you have to calm the nervous system down. And sometimes that can be like with deep breathing exercises, whatever it really is. But for her, we just need to tap into like a happy memory to get her like nervous system to just calm down a little bit.
You know, the hard part about what you said, and I love that story, I'm now only going to have people color snowflakes when they come to me with chronic pain. You know, the hard part is now me knowing how true that is, and also being the guy who, if you would have told me that in the middle of my injury, like I need to work on like my emotions, I'm not ready to physically heal, I mean, I would have flipped you off. I remember being so convinced my problem was physical because there was the injury, there was the event, there was the x-ray, right? The story, the diagnosis, so many collected experiences of feeling broken that if you would have asked me at all, what do I think my mind has to do with why this is not changing, even after the herniations healed, even after the fractures healed, I would have said, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I was wrong.
For sure. I mean, the research and takes on chronic pain thankfully have developed a lot more. So it is very multifactorial, like we've talked about. For me, going back to your question, the wording people use, the stress levels they have. Like I also do pelvic floor therapy. I'll definitely see that a lot in like my pelvic floor patients. Like if they come in super high stress, super like sympathetic nervous system drive, like all the way on 10, I can just tell like, okay, we are not ready for a lot of things right now. Like there's a lot of things you have to work on. There's a lot of talking I have to do in education. It just takes so much more because of that. Of course, sex is going to be painful. You can't even take a deep breath. Like, you know, there's a lot to it. Just the wording and like the presentation they have for sure. It's big.
Yeah, that's when you call Alice. Go print out more snowflakes.
More snowflakes,
we got
guys.
we got a hell of a case coming in.
Going back, oh, sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, going back to, and I also want to say thank you for saying the specific diagnoses, because that's something that I think we should normalize more, is saying the names of these things, like T12 fracture, disc herniation at multiple levels. Like these are scary words that a lot of times get thrown out, but like kind of should be normalized. Like they happen. It's a thing, you know, and people can recover and heal from them. So thank you for saying the actual things. When you did find that out and you said no surgery, what happened next?
I was given a brace. Felt like I was wearing a corset. The thing was tight as hell.
Yeah.
Little twist to turn. So you really try to stabilize and reduce movement, which, although really helpful to stabilize after an acute injury, there's absolutely a time and a place for rest.
Yes.
I didn't know, okay, well, then it's time to move, you know? And I thought like rest. So that's what almost laid down the foundation of movement's bad for me. If we have to brace and stabilize this, and again, that should absolutely be the protocol with a traumatic injury like that.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I'm forgetting because the pain drugs were really good. It was probably like 3-ish months of you're not doing anything. Like bedridden, try to move, a rotation, no axial loading, don't hold on to anything. Hold on to the stair rails when you get up. They showed me specific ways of how to get on and off the floor, on and in and out of my bed. This is like, don't move anything. And so began the start of weakness and being deconditioned. And once I kind of got past that acute injury phase, it was then, all right, who are the PTs? Who are the people who know what they're doing? Kind of going out, scouting out the different areas. And, you know, I know everybody gets into this with great intentions. I don't think anybody gets into this, you know, with malicious intentions. I just didn't get any help there. And maybe it wasn't the help I needed, but, you know, I had felt like every PT, it was like, okay, great consultation, the head of the clinic owner, like they're really hearing me. I'm in really good hands. And then the assistant would take over.
Gotcha.
And it's like, yeah, it's my first week here. And it's like, I need, this isn't it. And I think that was just, you know, maybe it was my roll of the dice. Maybe that was just my experience with it. But I kind of had that experience at a couple different places. And so I kind of bounced in and out of PT. I tried getting a personal trainer. I went through chiropractic, acupuncture, acupressure, massage, tried yoga, got desperate, found people online who had their own, you know, methods figured out. Nobody certified, licensed, just like
trying things
kinda,
out.
Hey, doors open in the back. Come on through. Don't wake my mom. Just weird, like, because that's what you do when you're desperate
You'll
and you're in
try
pain.
anything.
Anything. And everything that you haven't tried is like, oh, that's got to work for me. If it's weird, if it's expensive, that's like the criteria. It's got to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
I learned the hard, expensive way. Don't do that.
What ended up working for you that made you develop and find Pain Academy?
Yeah. So I was in the grocery store one day and I was having like a hard time pulling the milk off the shelf. And this was like 5 years, maybe like 4 or 5 years after my break. So things were not going well.
Yeah.
My disability and limitation was just going up, despite being very far away from the injury itself. And this person approaches me and they hand me their business card and they're like, I've got a, clinic right across the street. Come see me. I'd love to help you with your knee. And I'm like, oh God, here we go again. My knee, I broke my back, dude. Thought nothing of it, threw his card in the backseat of my car and thought nothing of it. 6 months later, I'm at the gym. I became a personal trainer and corrective exercise specialist. I'm like, okay, maybe I need to learn what's really going on so I can fix it myself and participate in my own recovery. And I was not leading by example. It was too painful to re-rack weights. So I just left them out. I was that guy, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. But the gym members were getting pissed. And one gym member comes up to me. He's like, dude, this is ridiculous. Call my guy.
No way.
Yeah, call my guy. And I look at the card, and it's the same guy that approached me.
Wow.
No way.
But like, this was 45 miles away. So
oh, shit.
Something's going on here where it's like, go see this guy.
Yeah, definitely. It's a sign.
Yeah, it's a sign. And it was a posture therapist.
Okay.
I had no idea what that meant. Like, I thought posture was just, my early experience was as men should walk like this and shoulders back, and my piano teacher hitting my fingers when I slouched. So I had a really poor understanding of what posture was, which is why I wrote it off. And fast forward, I go see this guy in person and I bring my big manila folder of x-rays, MRIs, all the reports, everything. Yeah. He's like, just put it on my desk. That's not going to help us anymore. I'm going to take a picture of your, I'm going to take a picture of you. Let's do a couple simple movement patterns. Just stand up, take a photo, bend forward, photo, squat, single leg stand, just like basic, simple movement patterns. No fancy x-rays or scans. And he sat down right next to me and pulled up his laptop and he's like, look what's going on here. Look at how this side is experiencing movement entirely different than this side. Let's try to relax that today. For the next 5 minutes or an hour, hour and a half, he didn't touch me, no machines. He asked me to lay down on the ground, guided my body into this position, breathe, relax. What do you feel? Breathe. The whole time I'm thinking, God, how much is this going to cost me?
Yeah, like stuff.
Yeah, cool. Another thing that doesn't work.
It's just not going to work.
Oh, God. I wrote it off because it was like, Alice, it's the basics. Give me the intense stuff. I've got an intense problem. Don't be throwing this like elementary stuff at me. But it was the basics. And I stood up. I wasn't fixed. It wasn't like a miracle. I wasn't healed, but I was better. And I was better for the first time in my life in 5 years when nobody touched me.
Yeah.
And without any medication.
And no medication. And what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And if he just like guided me, can I guide myself? Like, do I need this guy? What does he know that I don't know? I went so far and hard in that direction of no more zooming in. We didn't have one discussion about my back pain or my story or my injury. It was just right now, where are you at? And how do we move you forward? And it was almost like there was a separation of this story and identity. And there's no more chicken or the egg, me arguing for my limitations. How do we get the hips to be hips again? And how do we get the pelvis to move and the joints around it? Can we get a little bit more movement in them? And it worked.
Yeah, unfortunately, like the physical therapy profession, there's just so many holes in it. And it sucks that that was the experience that you had, and that pains us. But it is definitely a very common thing, and insurance world and the healthcare systems are not benefiting physical therapy profession right now.
How do both of you work through that? Because both of you are on this call right now. It's the end of a long day. You've probably given your clients your all today, your patients, and you're coming on here because there's like a deep level of caring. So like, how do you navigate like your, oh, I want to go to the ends of the world and help people, but maybe like, are you running into limitations of I can only do so much?
Yeah. I like that you said that the correctional posture specialist was like actually just analyzing your movement, because I feel like as PTs, our eyes are our best like resource, you know? Like, yes, we have to do a lot of documentation. Like a lot of times we do have to document and like look at our computer, but sometimes I like put that away and I'm just like, okay, like let me break this movement down. Usually if like I'm evaluating someone for the first time and it's some sort of like back, lower body injury, I always have them squat. I always have them like bend forward and try to like pretend like they're picking something up off the floor. And I think that that's very, very important, rather than just being like, okay, how many degrees of motion do you have? How is your strength? That's something you can just always look at, but you can gain so much information from watching somebody do a movement. Like you can tell that somebody has weak glutes if they do like a terrible squat.
Yeah.
They're
But
falling backwards or
anyways,
forwards. That gives you a lot of information.
Yeah.
exactly.
Or their knees can't not touch each other.
They cave in. Yeah. But back to your question, for me, we both started travel PT as new grads. We were fresh little baby physical therapists with no experience. And to me, I told myself, like, I had worked as a physical therapy tech at a big company where I was working with like 4 or 5 patients at a time. The therapist would do manual on the patient for half the time, and they would hand me their patient for the rest of the session. And I just tell them, okay, do this exercise. And then I run to the next person. You're doing this exercise. You're doing this one. And the therapist is busy doing manual. So unfortunately, the experience that you had is not uncommon. And a lot of people end up going to these like so-called like physical therapy mills because they're convenient. There's a lot of them. They're close by to your house. And you know, you can get in very easily because these therapists are probably seeing like 20 plus patients a day. But for me as a new grad therapist, I told myself, I don't want to hurt this profession. I want to focus on one-on-one contracts. I want to devote my time to one person at a time and really give like my 110% effort to the patient that's in front of me. And so I've done 7 jobs so far, and I've been able to stick to one-on-one contracts, but most of them are out in the West. Like for some reason, Washington, California, they have all the one-on-one. So I'm sticking to like the West Coast, but that's kind of how I would say I manage this, like, I guess, burnout. It's a lot to like work face to face with people 10 hours a day.
Yeah. It's really, really challenging. I think about it every day. My company, I'm an internal traveler, so I just stick with one company. And I've been with this company now for, like, I just hit my 2-year mark. And I have noticed the shift from when I first started and how the clinics ran versus now. They are pushing triples. They are trying to get more people in the door at once because of all of the cuts, and like Medicaid, Medicare, even commercial insurances are now changing. Like there's so many rules to the insurances, and it just sucks. So I have seen the shift myself in the profession and just my company. It's just going to a place that is going to make the physical therapy profession really bad when we now have our doctorates and can treat people well, and we have the background and knowledge to, but we can't because they're trying to double and triple people. I mean, I have literally seen physical therapists put 5 to 7 people on them in an hour, and I'm like, that should be illegal. Like, that's fucking crazy. Like, what? And I absolutely refuse to ever do that. But there's a huge switch now to cash-based PT where so many people are leaving like corporate PT America to do cash-based. For me, I'm like, I'm doing this for now. I really want to get my experience to work with as many people as I can and travel. And then when I stop traveling, I don't want to have to deal with this and insurance.
Yeah.
And I think a
it's
lot of people
been
are doing that.
so it's been like 10, 11 years since I've gone through that PT process. So it's going not a favorable direction.
No,
it's not.
because the Medicare reimbursement rates keep going down, and then it's just not profitable for these companies to not at least overlap patients. So
Right.
unfortunately, yeah, it probably hasn't gone better. It's probably just getting worse and worse. And that's why we talk so much about travel, because you can find clinics that you want to work at. And it's a little bit better than like starting as a new grad. And usually those companies that double, triple book people are preying on the new grads because they're like, oh, we'll offer this competitive salary and we'll give you a bonus if you see this many people in the month. Obviously, that's very attractive as a new grad who has hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans after PT school.
Yeah, bring it on, huh?
Yeah, bring it on. I'll do it. And I think that's why things are just kind of getting a little bit worse in the profession.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's going in both directions. People are leaving and doing their own thing, or their mills are growing. So it's like both ends of the spectrum, I guess you can say, is what I'm noticing at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to go back to how you said, so I didn't know that Pain Academy used to be like an in-person thing.
Yes, I didn't either.
And then you transitioned to like completely virtual, right? What kind of caused you to transition that into a virtual space?
Yeah. So, I never thought of bringing this online originally. And from the day of inception, when I had that first session, I was both relieved and hopeful that I have a fighting chance at making a comeback. And I was also pissed. Like, why was this never once recommended? The thing that actually like worked. And why is it not being covered by insurance? What is going on here?
Oh, that part.
So yeah. And so the idea was like, how do I bring this information to scale? Step one is I've got to know what the hell I'm doing. I've got to get really knowledgeable here. So I opened up a practice in Westlake Village, Thousand Oaks area, just north of Los Angeles, and just wildfire. I mean, I went from one client to 120 sessions every 2 weeks.
Wow.
So to make that very real, 60 sessions a week, 10 to 12 appointments a day. And this is not revolving door. These are one-on-one hour-long sessions.
Yeah.
So I was in therapy one-on-one for about 10 to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, probably 3 to 4 years.
Wow.
And it got to a point, and the only way you do that is by being a former people pleaser, child adversity guy who has no boundaries, and you just say yes to anything and everybody, because I just couldn't say no to people who needed help. I knew what it felt like, so I was killing myself with this one-on-one practice. When I started to get this burnout, I started to scale back from 10 to 12 appointments a day to like 6 appointments a day. That was like about my threshold. And like any business, if you're going to scale down volume, what's got to go up? Prices have got to go up. My time became my biggest limiting factor for the demographic, people who could afford my help, and the time that I could give people. I built somewhere between like a 6 to 18 month waiting list, fully booked out at any given time. It was so painful. There were 2 things that happened simultaneously, like really all together. It was so painful for me to tell somebody, no, I don't have time for you.
Because you want to help everybody.
Yeah, and I want to. And oh my God, they'd send me their photos, these huge, money's not an option, like just please. And I have to say no, like I need to connect with my son. And I was married at the time, not married anymore, probably because of that. Different conversation for a different time.
Fair.
And and it literally, I felt like I was saying no to me when I needed it the most. So number one, that sucked. kind of what you said, Alice, which is like, when people come to me, what are the basics? For the most part, unless there's an extreme or severe case, everybody needs to have some basic training. Ankles should probably move better. The knees could probably use a little bit of strength and mobility. Can we improve hip flexion, extension, and rotation? Can we get pelvic motion? Can we get the spine? You know, the basic minimum requirements of human movement.
Yeah.
And as I'm doing this approach in volume, and I'm starting to see that if we're treating movement patterns and we're no longer putting somebody on a spondy protocol or a this protocol, can I actually just make a program that has the basics to it? And I did. And I made that program part of the condition. If you're going to work with me, before you even sign up for my waiting list, go do this program.
Yeah. I love that.
And what I found was, without me giving my time and people paying an incredibly high rate to work with me, they were getting better. The amount of messages were like, hey, dude, we don't need to keep my appointment. I actually feel great. Can I just keep doing your program? Hell yeah, dude, please. Oh, people pleaser me was so relieved. Hell yeah, go do it, man.
Yeah.
And just like my personal business, one turned into another. And all of a sudden, I'm seeing, at the time, hundreds of people go through this system, spend literally 1 to 2% of what they would have spent to actually hire me as their coach and work with them one-on-one, and they're getting better. Well, better's better.
Yeah.
Okay, this thing has legs to it. Now let me go refine this. Fast forward another 8 years, I've built an entire team of, I've got a team of developers, custom coders. We've got an algorithm that now meets individual people based on where they're at. And the program customizes itself based on not protocols, but based on what actually helps you move and feel better right now.
For sure.
The movements that help, great. Let me go show you progressions and go do more of what works. The movements that don't work, well, here's why, and let me actually guide you through it with some graded exposure. And now it's just taken off to be this like own thing with life. And I really, on a very rare occasion, do one-on-ones just to keep me sharp and in the purpose of it, because I've found that having this successful online program, great, but I've kind of like lost that thread of like, what is this really about? It's now about like metrics and business and performance and support metrics. And I want to get back to the craft that made me fall in love with this. So now I kind of say yes sometimes to some people.
Okay, that's fair. I think it's like good to have a balance of both, because it is draining, like working with people with chronic pain. Like you have so much education, so much to talk about and do. And it's also like, as an empath of people who want to help people, right? Like we feel it, especially with your just like personal history and everything. So you got to do stuff for yourself sometimes.
Yeah, it was kind of the wall, you know, it was kind of this wall, and I let people into it, but I wasn't, you know, absorbing their story. I wasn't having to tell my story 12 times a day and putting my nervous system back in that, oh, you're broken, right? Are you? Are you not? What's going on here? So it was helpful significantly for my own life.
Going back to the program, how does it work if somebody's starting out with your program? Do they answer a series of questions that kind of helps to like guide it a certain way, so that it can be like tailored more specifically towards the individual?
Yeah, so there's a couple of conditions. We've got to get some information first. First up is the actual, like the physical stuff. What's going on? Is there a diagnosis that you're coming with? Did it happen just during a time of stress? Was there an impact injury? Like, tell us more about what's going on. So I can then help people figure out from the get-go, okay, is this more structural and physical? Do they have a very sound mind, but we really need the physical tools? Or is this more neuroplastic? Does this have more to do with nervous system dysregulation? Okay, that person's going to need more of the mental and emotional support and some physical tools. So I've got to figure out like, where on the spectrum of pain are we? Number one. Number two, what is the main area that you want to focus on? Because even if I know what I'm doing, if you come to me with back issues and I give you what I believe to be the root causes, like foot, knee, hip, or shoulder, if you don't think you're working on the back, you're not going to make progress. So I've got to sprinkle in some back stuff to make people feel at home.
Yeah, that's fair.
So target the area. That's really important. And then the last, and I think the most important, is I run people through a movement assessment. So I've got 8 of the key movement patterns that I've found reveal, and my God, there could be hundreds.
Yeah.
But just what are like the 8 main movement patterns that most people are going to either rely on a daily basis, or what movement patterns can expose neuromuscular inefficiencies?
Yeah.
And I try to make nerdy stuff very simple. Like when you squat, does your weight stay 50-50? Or do we shift over? Like yes or no? And after I ask people all of these questions, I then basically say, okay, we've got the information. Here's probably the best path that we start off with. Even though I've got a lot of experience with this, at the end of the day, you could have the same injury as somebody else and your path looks entirely different. So here's a starting point. And then from there, it's a conditional model. If it works, great. Here's why. If it doesn't, great. Here's why. Then let's go do this. So it's a really big conditional trial, process, and error model.
Yeah. Cool. I think the movement patterns are super important. And just even like in the physical therapy world too, like I've definitely seen therapists more rely on like the numbers and like MMTs and outcome measures, and not as much what does your arm look like when you are overhead reaching? What are your hips doing when you're like doing single leg balance? Like, can you even do it? Like, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it can be, specificity is great. And what does that mean to people?
Yeah.
You know, my goal is not to get the hip to articulate to this degree and this degree, because I could I could quantifiably, I could measurably say like, hey, because of all of these books on my wall, because of this cert and this program, this says this is how you move. But at some point, we got to step outside of the textbooks and say, hey, what feels better? When you do this routine, does squatting just feel a little better? Does bending forward feel like it has a little more space? Like you're the only person hardwired into your nervous system. Let's tap into that feedback that no machine that I have can measure that. Can you just feel better with measured movement patterns, not articulable ranges that we're really trying to like map on a table? And maybe that's a weakness, right? Maybe we need to get way more specific. But what I found is not everybody who wants to participate in their own rescue has the bandwidth to go become a movement expert. They want to become an expert in just self-care and feeling not bad. You know, for all these people out there at home, it's like, okay, how do I squat better? Cool, this helps. This works. Let's keep doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you mentioned you've reached like tens of thousands of people, even like virtually. And I was just curious, because you have like your 12-week program, right? How soon do you usually like expect people to see some sort of improvement with your program? And then also, what have the outcomes been for the people that have went through it?
Yeah, great question. So the program is actually a year long.
Oh, okay.
It's divided up into phases. So the first phase is about 8 weeks. And that's when I tell people, give it until the first phase. Not to be pain-free. Setting those expectations is going to... I was let down so many times by false promises. I refuse to dangle a carrot anymore. But at the end of 8 weeks, you're going to understand your body more. You're going to understand your problem a little better. You're going to be more reconnected. Maybe the symptom hasn't changed, but your ability to navigate what is happening and having an internal dialogue to actually do more than just resist and fight pain, that will change. So give me 8 weeks to build a foundation, and then let's see where we can go from there. Stat-wise, 74% of people feel better in the first phase, in those first 8 weeks. It's significant. It's 50 to 75% better just
That's
by doing
amazing.
the basics.
Right.
Yeah.
Where we go from here is really skewed because the
Mhm.
amount of people that actually complete the program is small. I think it's like 20 something, 25% of people
Okay.
Yeah.
start to finish actually complete it. It's a year. It's a
Yeah,
beast.
it's long.
Mhm.
It's a long. And what's really challenging and why the data is very skewed is, are they quitting because it's long? Are they
Mhm.
quitting because it helps?
Because they feel better.
Yeah, because,
Mhm.
you know, people don't want to fix problems. The only reason why they're here is because they're in pain. And now that the symptoms, even if just like 20% better, that's enough to quit.
Right.
Yeah.
It worked.
It's
Cool. I'm not
something.
irritable. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can be intimate again, and like I know I'm not like fixed, but like I can kind of show up to work and not be an ass. Like, you know,
Yeah.
and this is what I did for years. You stop doing the things that work because
Mhm.
if your goal is to just get out of pain, the hell
Mhm.
are you continuing a year-long program for if you've hit your goal?
Right.
For sure.
I'd say about 20-25% of people actually complete the program.
Mhm.
Above 70% of people feel better in the first 30 days. In the first 3 months, we move towards like 84 something percent of people
Wow.
are feeling
It's
like
amazing.
incredibly more than
Yeah.
50% better. So it's significant, and it's a really hard thing to measure because it's
Mhm.
subjective, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
It
think
is,
that
for sure.
something I really like about, because I was stalking your content probably over the past like month or two. Like I had definitely seen your post pop up because, you know, a lot of physical therapists follow your page. Like I've been talking to my coworkers and they're like, yeah, I've definitely seen them pop up. Like
Oh, that's
I
cool.
love their stuff. And for the longest time, actually, we thought that you were a PT yourself because
we
you're just
did think that. We're
so
like, is he a physical
knowledgeable.
therapist?
Yeah, like
Thanks for
the way
saying
that
that.
you describe things is just like you could tell you're very like detail oriented and you know like how the body works and how it functions. But what I
Yeah.
really like about Pain
Thank you.
Academy is that you make it digestible for people. Like even for people that are not in the medical field, like they can understand what you're saying because you keep it so simple. You're like, okay, you just have to move your hips back a little bit so they're like here, you know? And I think like that's one thing that I really, really like, that you like break down the movements, keep it simple because people get overwhelmed very easily. At least I know like my patients that come in and they're like, I try to explain as much as possible to them. I tell them why they're doing certain things. I don't just tell them, okay, let's do this. Let's do this. Moving on to this exercise. I think like personally for me, knowing like the background and the reason why we're doing certain things is going to make me a lot more compliant with like the exercise or the intervention. I think like educating people a lot also helps. And that might be the reason why, like, initially, just knowing a little bit more about the anatomy and like how the body moves is so helpful for people.
Yeah, and you know, what I found was fascinating on my journey was when I started to build a private practice before I went online, I had this vision of like, let's go get top PTs in here. Let's get people with doctorates. Like, I want to build a super team. And they're in pain. Why? I thought the more academic you are, like the less you hurt, the more you can explain things on cellular levels and get into the nitty-gritty biomechanics and the really complex stuff. Like, shouldn't that just be the epitome of movement then? And what I found was like the academic stuff doesn't translate well to real world application.
Yeah, for sure. Like
It just
book smart and then real world application.
Yeah, and I was going to book smart people and I was
Mm.
measuring their efficacy by how smart they were,
Yeah.
not who was living it. Who are the people who are out there who can walk the walk and do what I really want to have be done here? I think I learned about the body first because mine didn't work. I didn't start off in the academic side. And when I started to find these therapeutic modalities that worked, it was first like, make it make sense. Meet me on a human level. What's going on here? And then I had to go put myself back through academics to then try to reach for why does this work the way it does? But like my entire understanding started off first with like real world limitation and then clawing my way out of that, and what I had to learn about basics. And then I figured, well, doesn't everybody else need the basics too? And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. So kind of like the reverse.
Yeah, it was the reverse.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the reverse. And, I, to this day, like, the more I go in the academics, I mean, I'm reading stuff, and it's not to persuade people not to do that. Like, it's so incredibly important to have that foundation. But I'm in these books that I'm reading, it's like, how is this going to help somebody who's in their mid 50s and doesn't really know how to take care of their bodies? Like, how is this going to make them care?
Yeah.
We need to meet them on a human level first and make this stuff simple and easy to understand. And easy and simple is not in those books.
Yeah. Totally agree with that. What we get taught in school and then what we have to do in real life, it's definitely
a little different.
Yeah.
There's definitely a
different.
skew deviation there.
Yeah, and of course, like for standards, like of course everybody needs to be walking into
Yeah.
something, a profession like this, with that
Yeah.
that like agreeable, what is the minimum amount of information somebody needs to
Yeah.
know to do this?
Mhm.
But what I found is those are also the people we see online who have like a client do a Bulgarian split squat with 6 different bands going 5 different ways,
Oh,
push through the pinky toe, articulate the arch, and then externally rotate to.
yeah.
It's like, dude, just move
There's
the
too much
knee.
going on. Yeah.
There's too much. Yeah.
It's
Too
too
much.
much.
Oh my gosh. I have this
It's-
specific PT in mind that
I
I've
know,
seen
me
on social
too.
media.
I literally do too.
Like there's
DM
somebody
me, I want to
doing
find
like
them.
yeah, there's one exercise where he has someone sitting on like a Swiss ball, and they're doing like he's giving perturbations while the patient is doing something else, and like he's balancing on one leg on the Swiss ball, and I'm just like, what are we working towards with this exercise? Like you're doing 12 different things at once. Like how does this translate into like actual functional movement?
How does this translate is a great
Yeah.
tagline.
Right. We'll never know.
Well, no, and that's the thing. Nobody, not even that person, will ever know.
Yeah.
But it looks like flashy
cool.
or sexy
Yeah.
or
Yes.
attractive and cool. So like,
Great marketing.
oh my God, I'm in pain because I'm not doing that, right? It's great. It's marketing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I
Real
think people are craving simple.
for sure. I definitely agree with that. I always say less is more. I like say that to my patients all the time. Real quick, before we get into our game to close out, I did want to say, actually, one of the reasons why I thought you were a PT was because you use a lot of muscle energy. And I was like, whoa, like I don't really see too many other people using muscle energy like how you are. And especially for like just anything hip. So I really liked that you use a lot of muscle energy techniques because I do that a lot as like, well, just with my pelvic floor background, like I just focus on hips a lot for like everyone. So I do that a lot.
Yeah, it's key that we lost the ability to drive from our hips anymore. And I think having a good focus is a great start.
For sure.
But thank you for saying that. I appreciate the
Yeah.
compliments.
All right.
Game time.
Well, yes. So we kind of wanted to do a little quick game to end things off, do something fun, lighthearted. So we will do a like quick rapid fire round of questions with Vinny. So are you ready, Vinny?
I've been ready this whole time. Let's do it.
Okay. His answer's
I'm
locked
sitting
in.
up. Now I'm sitting up. I'm bracing for impact. Okay.
Okay. Give us one movement or exercise you can't live without.
Sitting in the bottom of a squat supported. Sitting on a yoga block and
Okay.
just reminding my body that being in a deep squat is a position of rest and it should feel good and the muscles can tune up like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Spending
That's a
time,
good one.
quality time there every single day. Emails, Love Island, doesn't matter what's going on.
Oh
You're
my
doing it in a deep
gosh.
squat.
Don't even get me started on Love Island.
The new season though, right?
You watch it too? That's funny. That's so
Thankfully,
funny.
there's no episode today. That's why we're here right now.
It's one of those
Otherwise,
things.
we'd be busy.
Yeah, is that what it is? It's one of those things where it's like, I'm not going to do it. This is stupid. I have so
No,
many.
that's valid.
I have people to heal. I've got things to do. But then you see this train wreck, and it's like, oh my
Yeah, but
God.
Love Island first.
Yes.
Yeah. What is going on here?
That's so funny. Most underrated exercise anyone can do.
A sit to stand.
Mm-hmm.
From
We
a
do
chair.
that all
You said
day, every
that.
day.
Standing. Sit,
Yeah.
stand.
Yeah.
And you do it anyways. If we can turn it
Mhm.
into a movement, get some repetitions in there, maybe get a couple sets going, minute break in between, we might find that we already have a little mini workout built into what we're already capable we're doing anyways.
Totally agree with that. One book or resource that changed your view on pain.
The Exquisite Risk by Mark Nepo, who is a cancer survivor. And I never knew men could write like this about love and the world and being soft and being open and having forgiveness. The things that you don't think affect your movement are the words in these books, and how you view and see the world, how you hold gratitude in your heart. The exercise, and I tell this to members all the time, the exercises that didn't work for me were the same ones that started to work for me once I learned how to just meet myself differently. Not because I found the magic missing exercise or because I discovered the trainer who helped me do too much, but because I actually just learned to meet myself with kindness and compassion and being a human first. And that's what Mark's writing did, just cracked me open.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I definitely want to read more about that book.
Yeah.
Okay. Morning routine essential.
While the coffee's making, you just get a little bit of movement in. My essential is something that I've found help so many people. So many people fall into this all or nothing trap. I'm either going to do my 45 minutes of exercises or I'm not. My essential non-negotiable is my minimum standard for the day. So one movement. It is the easiest movement to say yes to, and sometimes that changes. Maybe it's like a kneeling hip flexor stretch. Maybe it's just lying on my back with my legs over a chair. But my essential is I just say yes to one thing. And if that's all I have the capacity and bandwidth and space for the day, cool. I hit my minimum. Hell yeah, I took care of myself today. And what I found is that just by saying yes to one thing, right down on the ground, what else can feel good right now? And it just puts me in the practice of self-care without feeling like it's a chore or some daunting task that I've got to go do to check the box.
Sometimes I find myself just like, if I haven't gotten much movement throughout the day, because I don't count like doing our work or like, demonstrating an exercise or so, like here and there. I'm like, no, I need to like actually do some exercise. Sometimes if I'm like, okay, I didn't do much today, I will literally just stand there and brush my teeth and then start doing squats like in front of the bathroom mirror. And that just makes me feel good because you're like, at least I got a little bit of movement in today. It was something, and something is better than nothing.
Yeah.
And I feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well said.
Less is more.
Yes.
Okay. Most misunderstood thing about pain.
How you meet it internally is going to determine how long it sticks around, your experience of it, and how successful you're going to be at getting out of it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Agreed. Do you think massage therapy is beneficial?
I love getting massages.
It's fair.
Is it going to replace the work that you need to do? Absolutely not. But can it be nice sometimes?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can it feel good to be touched or to have somebody else take care of you? Yeah. Can it be a catalyst for moving some stuff around? Sure. But you are always going to be the best person for that.
Yeah. I love a good massage.
Oh my God, bring it on.
Yeah. The deeper, the better. Okay. Cold plunge or sauna?
Sauna, when you have childhood adversity and all that stuff, and like sometimes it's just nice to feel good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't need to go create a stress response.
Yes.
I do enough of that with ultra marathon running and everything else.
That's totally valid. That's definitely a lot of stress on the body.
Yeah.
Okay. One word to describe your mission.
Clarity.
I like. Cool.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Clarity.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That was all the questions for today.
Cool. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, that pretty
Thank
much wraps
you.
up this episode. Thank you so much, Vinny, for coming on. Great conversations. We always just find such great guests. We always
Thank
can.
you so much.
I'm always looking at the time like, fuck, there's so many more things I want to ask and talk about, but we are running out of time.
Let's do round 2 if you want. If the ratings are good,
Absolutely.
let's do round 2 and crack
Yeah.
at it.
For sure. We will definitely take you up on that.
All right. I know it's super late there. Go get some sleep. All right.
Yes. Vinny, where can everyone find you? Pimp yourself out.
At Pain Academy on socials, and then on my website, painacademy.net. And I don't expect anybody to just believe what I'm saying. Go feel for yourself. The first week of my program is always free because it's really important for you to vet me out and to vet what I'm saying out. And if you feel like this thing has legs to it, it's rock and roll.
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome.
So go follow him and look at his content because it's super informative and educational. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, leave us a rating wherever you're listening to us, and share this episode with someone who you think needs to hear this information or would benefit from this conversation. All right, until next time, keep moving with intention, and we will see you guys next week. Bye, guys.
Bye.